Welcome to the talk about the PhenoRob demonstrator called in-field precise sensor / tool placement. So I'm speaking here, of course, for a larger group of people, which is listed here in no particular order. And I want to thank especially the PhD students who did the work and provided lots of slides so I can present all of that today. So I want to start to explain what this demonstrator is meant to do. So what in-field precise sensor tools placement actually means. And so it's actually quite simple. So we assume we have a robot arm, and this robot arm is mounted to a mobile robot. And on the top and on the head of the mobile arm at the end, there is a sensor or a tool. So a sensor can be a camera, like in the middle, or it can be a tool like a spray nozzle or a scissor or something, which can be used to manipulate something in the field. And then the idea is that we give this system of the mobile robot and the sensor and the robot arm, we give it a coordinate somewhere on the field, a coordinate of interest, and then the whole system moves automatically or even autonomously to that particular coordinate and places the tool or the sensor exactly at that coordinate. And exactly means here within a distance of a maximum of 10 centimeters, roughly, yeah, 5 to 10 centimeters probably. So this is your whole idea. We give it a coordinate, it goes there and places a tool there. And what I want to show you today in this talk is why this might be a good idea. So how could this be useful? Then how this is achieved. So what are the different steps necessary to do it? And I will explain those steps. And the last part will be, where are we now? So what is the status of the demonstrator? And yeah, so what still needs to be done. Okay, let's start with the why. So one example application would be spot application, which is based on UAV data. So we have, for example, UAV, which generates a map using sensors, cameras, or something, and identifies problematic areas or spots. And then the robot is sent to that specific spot to do a specific management action, like applying herbicide, fungicide, or even fertilizer. So this is one possible application. And another one is actually quite similar, is that the UAV maybe does not detect a specific weed or a specific disease, but it detects some anomaly, like something is weird, we should have a better look here. And then the robot can go there and, for example, have a closer look under a leaf, or has a different sensor or a better sensor, or it might even a destructive sampling, like cutting a leaf and do some further analysis with that. So this is another example. And the last one would be improved 4D crop modeling. So our robot is meant to do 4D crop models, so high resolution 3D models in the field over the growing season, and we want to observe single plants over the time. So we need to go to single plant. You cannot do that with every plant in the field, that's too much. So we need to go to particular plant in the field, find them again, and then and inspect them closer. So we need this capability to go there and do that, and we may even augment our models with high resolution sensors, as you will see later, or we complete the models if we have incomplete 3D data, for example. So this is another example. So how do we do that? So what are the steps necessary? The first thing is have a robot. So you need a robot to do that. And when you have a robot, you also need a traversability map. So you need to tell the robot where it is allowed to drive and where it's not. So we, of course, don't want to destroy any plants. So there must be something like this. Of course, we need to generate a target coordinate, a coordinate of interest to go to. So this is a third step. The next one is then planning a path from the actual position, from the current position to the desired location, using that particular map, so not destroying any plants. And the second last step is then execute the path, means control the robot to actually follow the path. And then when we're there, control the arm and perform the desired action. So these are the steps, and I want to go through those steps now and tell you how we realize this and what is necessary to do it. So have a robot. We have a robot. Probably all of you know that robot. It's a CP4 robot, and this is a robot which is meant to do the demonstrator. And it has a very high precision GNSS IMU unit, so we can get a precise position and orientation from that. We have multiple high resolution cameras on it, and we have a high resolution laser scanner on it, and we have a robot arm, in brackets, not yet mounted. So this robot doesn't have the arm yet. This is one of the status information, so the arm is not yet on the robot. Next thing is we need a traversability map. And this is generated from UAV images. So with UAV images, we can generate from multiple images, overlapping images, we can generate a 3D structure, and then from that an auto mosaic, which we can use to generate this map. In this example here, we can detect the plots in the map, for example, by segmenting the crop pixels from the other pixels, like the weeds or the soil, and then do a DB scan to detect those plots. The next thing is row detection. So we can use a half transform also on those crop pixels to detect the crop rows in that map. And the last step would then be to extract the traversable rows, which are between the crop rows. So this now is the basis for a map that we can give to the robot to tell him where to go. The accuracy of that map is quite interesting, is in the order of a couple of centimeters. Yeah? So because there are ground control points measured precisely and RTK on the drone, we can assume that those maps, those order photos, have an accuracy in the order of a few centimeters. Okay, next step, where do we get the coordinate from? So we could use, for example, the same map that we had just before and do some weed and crop detection. So we could have a segmented segmentation here. In the example, it was a segmentation trained on 2020 data. And we could now use the information here to generate an interesting coordinate for the robot. It could be an area with a very high density or some specific weed. It can be derived from those type of information. Another example, and you will learn more about this in the next talk by Abel Barreto, is to use maps, disease maps. So here, what they do is they use multispectral images and machine learning algorithms to detect diseases in the field on a leaf level, so they can identify individual leaves which have a disease, and then generate maps from that. And from those maps, they could be given to the robot, and then the robot could do the according action. But as I said, there will be more about this procedure in the next talk. So the next step is path planning. So path planning means that we need to generate a series of poses. A pose is a combination of position and orientation, so that all wheels are always in the traversable area. So we don't want to destroy plants. This is the top rule, let's say. So we need to plan a path that can do that. And we use the traversability map from the UAV, generated from the UAV, as an input. So the map that we have seen before. What we also do is we do not actually control it for every single wheel separately. We use the traversability of the robot center. So we have to generate the map so that it has the robot center, so that it is related to the robot center. And we need, of course, to control also the orientation of the robot. The path planning algorithm then gets a starting point, it gets an end point, and then it fills intermediate points to plan a path along the row, for example, here. So, and the algorithm just generated a number of poses along these lines, and considering the traversability map that you've seen before. You can also change the rows with that, so the robot can turn. You see that in a minute a bit more closely. And then we can also drive around the corner and switch, for example, into another row of the field. The next step is then the actual execution of the path, so the control of the robot. And here we have basically two options. One is just following the points. It's so-called waypoint navigation. It's following the point that we generated with the path planner and just trusting the pose information that we get from the robot, from the GPS IMU, and trust that the map is accurate enough. And then we basically blindly follow those points and those instructions. So this is one option, and the other one is to follow the rows. Here's an example where we detect the rows, and we can in theory follow those lines and make sure that we don't cross rows or drive over plants. So this is especially needed if the pose of the robot is inaccurate or not accurate enough, let's say, or if the map is not accurate enough. In both cases, we need to have some local adjustment to the actual control of the robot. In our demonstrator, we decided to go with waypoint navigation only because we trust the pose and the map. I already said that the map is very accurate. It's in the order of a few centimeters. And I want to show you that the pose is actually also very accurate, so that we can actually do that and trust both in a way that it's enough to not destroy any plants. So a few words then about how the pose is calculated from the robot. So the pose is calculated by an RTK GNSS receiver, which has an accuracy of a couple of centimeters in good conditions, and an accelerometer and an angular rate sensor. And these sensor data are fused in an online extended Kalman filter, which is running on this red box here, which contains all the sensors and the GPS receiver, and which is on that robot. And we now want to evaluate how good this, how the accuracy of this device is, because we then can decide if we are fine with waypoint navigation or if we need something else. So it's not so easy to evaluate this because it's difficult to find a more accurate sensor outdoors, which we can use to evaluate the RTK GNSS. But we did what we used here is we integrated a total station measurement, which is a precise geodetic instrument. We integrated this into an algorithm which fuses the acceleration data, gyroscope data, heading from the two GNSS antenna and the total station into a trajectory estimation. This is an offline graph-based estimation and is supposed to be accurate in the order of a few millimeters, because this total station provides accuracies in the order of millimeters. So we integrated that, and then we compared this with a real-time extended Kalman filter-based estimation that comes in straight away from the robot. Here you see a comparison of the position along track, a horizontal cross track and vertical cross track of the robot pose, which is the yellow one. So the yellow is what we get in real time from the system. And you see here deviations from zero. Zero is our reference in the order of plus minus a couple of centimeters. And this is pretty much what we expect from a GNSS system, where GNSS is the main position information. So this is pretty good. And we can just ignore the blue one. It's not important now. And the same here for the orientation. So we have here the angles, roll, pitch in yaw, with respect to the reference, and everything is basically below 1/10 of a degree. Here again, summarized in a histogram. So we can say that the pose accuracy that we receive in real time from the robot is also in the order of a couple of centimeters. Okay, with this we can now go and control the robot. What we see here is a simulation. So it's pretty close to reality, but it's still a simulation, of course. And this simulation then gets these data from the GPS IMU receiver, and it then drives along the field. And this simulation really integrates the field, which has been the data here, which has been taken by the drone. And what you see here are the green line is the plan pairs, and the reds are the commands which are given to the robot to actually follow the path. So you can see that it kind of tries to stay here in that row, in the traversable area. And the traversable area is around 15 centimeter, 15. So when we have the map accuracy of a couple of centimeter, pose accuracy of a couple of centimeter, we're still within that 15 centimeters. And this is why we think that we can go without row following. We just rely on map and pose. By the way, this is 4 times speed here, so it's usually a bit slower, but that would be a bit boring. Good. The next step then is the arm. So the arm that we use is an X-arm7. It's a 7 degrees of freedom arm, and on the at the end of the arm, there's a camera setup consisting of 5 cameras. So there's 1 color camera in the middle, and around it there are 4 mono cameras. And they all have very high resolution. They have 20 megapixels, and they have a very near focus. So you can get very sharp, high resolution images when you're close. An example for this setup here would be to have high resolution relief images, for example, maybe to detect diseases or to improve or augment existing 3D models. Of course, this could be also a tool. In our example, we decided to go with a sensor, but as I explained at the beginning, this might be also a spray nozzle or something else which might be useful in some sort of application. This arm can be controlled via ROS, so that means it's the same environment which also controls the robot as a whole. And what it also can do is we can model collision. So that means we can give the system the dimension of the robot shell. We can also load potentially already existing data of the plant, so that the arm is not hitting those areas where it's not allowed to go, right? So we can basically constrain the motion of the arm so it's not going through the plants, for example. That's all possible. And then this arm receives a target position and a target orientation. So we want to have the arm pointing in that direction at that position. And then there is some inverse kinematics used to actually control the arm to go to that particular position and orientation. So because we have 7 degrees of freedom here, this is not a closed form solution, so there's some iterative process involved. You can see that here, but the robot will then move to that position and, for example, takes an image, which is also simulated here. So this is a simulation of the camera setup that we have on the arm. And we don't only have simulations. This was to get started, but in the last weeks, we also realized this on the real arm. And this is what you can see here. So this is the arm as it goes into the robot. It is mounted here on these linear axis. And here, this wooden box is basically a mock-up of the robot. So it has the same dimensions as the robot. And the idea is that we can just put that and mount it into the robot. Of course, it will be challenging to do that because there's lots of stuff in the robot, as you may have seen in one of the earlier slides. But we are pretty positive that we managed to do that. but the functionality of the arm is already shown here, the same as it would be later when the system is mounted into the robot. And you can also see here the images. They're pretty high resolved, and I think I have them here as well on the next slide. Yeah, just as an example, you can imagine that you see a lot of things here. Okay, so summarizing, where are we now? So the robot exists, and the robot was heavily used in this season to detect 3D data in the field. This is one of the reasons why we couldn't really use it for the demonstrator. So it was taking data weekly on a weekly basis in Klein Altendorf, and so it's working, it's running, and it's used. So the real-time pose estimation that we need for the pass execution is functioning and accurate enough, and the arm can be controlled, the camera head can be read out, and the mounting of the arm into the robot will happen soon. Soon means I would think in the order, we are talking about the order of some weeks. Because season is over now, and basically the robot is not used anymore anywhere else. The path planning based on the UAV derived traversability map is possible, and the path execution also, but so far only in simulation. But this will be transferred to a real robot within the next months. So I would say we will manage to do that within until the end of the year. And with this, I'm finished, and I'm happy to take questions.